Greetings, sovereigns. Please let me know if you can hear me. Y'all are waiting for me and everything. That's pretty cool. If you can hear me, let me know. I just had a little bit of tech issues. You can probably see all the arm of my camera and everything. You know. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me? All right. If you can hear me, thank you. All right, good, 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 good. So the music that you're actually listening to is from um, Chief Yuya's Noir Mail. So if you're listening or coming in later and you're unfamiliar with the music, that is some really great songs from Chief Yuya. Um, Not one of the newer ones, but good nonetheless. So check it out. Check it out on Spotify, if I'm not mistaken. Yes? All right. So, welcome into the Sovereign Space. It's a Sovereign Sunday. It is the 1st of August. And since we're going to go ahead, you'll probably notice the music kind of fading out. Um, just give me 1 second to readjust my screen. All right. Probably all see just tomatoes and what you would call it, peppers. All right, I'm having a bit of an issue with my camera, so just please forgive me. Let me greet everyone who's coming into the space. Now, listen, I have been hyped off of soca all day, and I decided it is evening, so we should calm and cool it down and pull in the reins a little bit. So, I selected some calm music. So let me greet everyone. Thank you. I think I saw Brother Antonio first in the space. So greetings. Peace, Takashia. Greetings, Chief Yuya. Greetings, Chief Yuya. Please don't fight. This is so funny. But greetings, Chief Yuya. Thank you so much for being in the space and joining us. It is always um, an honor to have you join us and support all of our new people as we step on out and do our thing. Thank you for offering that light and that guidance constantly. I give thanks for Sister Kashia. She's in the space too. Thank you for joining us. Ima Precious. And let me see who Mama Sequoia. All right. And Naya. Give thanks. And I think maybe Deidre Sully MPH. I don't really know if she's around. I'm playing. I'm playing. So I felt like it was really important to consider. Let me rearrange all of what you see here so you're not too confused about what we're doing today. But I thought it would be good to show us how to create a satisfying dish that had a bit of rice in it. The only thing is today we're actually using what we call wild rice instead. So wild rice is really beautiful and easy to work with. It's sweet. It has a nutty flavor, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But before we jump in, I know there was one of my sisters had a question about psyllium husk, and I thought that I would actually dig into psyllium husk and probably additional supplements that we can utilize in our diet later on this strong during our midday motivations, right? Because it makes sense. We're using specific ingredients and we're using them for their nutritional value. So if we're using them for their nutritional value, well, what is that value? Makes sense, right? It makes sense for us to know and dig into it, just to find out. But I wanted to share really quickly that psyllium husk is used predominantly because it's a soluble fiber. All right, and I know there are arguments for and against added fiber in the diet. There's no need to really add fiber if you're eating predominantly fresh fruits, veggies, and greens, right? If you're doing that and you're plugging away at it and you're making sure you're incorporating, again, hefty, hearty greens and veggies of all sorts, including the roots, then you don't have to worry too much about adding fiber. But the what I love about food prep is that there's a science to it, right? And so sometimes you'll find that food artists or food alchemists, um, they utilize the mechanics of ingredients, but they also utilize the chemicals in ingredients, right? And you'll see things like acids and bases coming together to create aeration or to increase the volume of something that you bake. You'll find maybe, sometimes they use baking soda for that purpose, or and even baking powder for that purpose. So those are chemical agents. The same is true for very natural agents or natural ingredients like psyllium husk, which is pretty much a fiber that's extracted from a plant. All right, and that plant really it's soluble. That's the good thing about it, the way it's processed. So psyllium husk is used in foods that are vegan foods or so, or people who are not vegan as well, because the truth is people who are not vegan, plant-based, or vegetarian tend to have that issue with low amounts of fiber in the diet, right? And so yeah, they may be eating a lot of variety of carbs or carb heavy foods, but they may not find, or they may be eating fresh fruits and veggies, and but not getting the amounts of fiber that's necessary or the nutrients. Because recently I bit into a fruit, and I just only because I don't like to waste, I ate it, but it didn't taste like an actual food. I had a issue with it. I had a issue with not just the taste, but it didn't feel like it nourished my body. And so when you eat foods, you want to make sure it's nourishing. You want to make sure you can feel that it's energizing you. It is, increasing your just how you feel, increasing your mood, just allowing you to pull off of those nutrients and allowing your body to actually function off of nutrients. If you don't feel that way, or you feel that it is drawing away from the moisture in your body, then it means that that's not a food for you. All right. And so the thing about psyllium husk is it is also used as a digestive aid. All right. There are other aspects to it, but we'll talk about that in another session. Not this session. We're prepping food, so we're just gonna keep it nice and light. Keep it nice and light. But psyllium husk is used for its mechanical properties, right? So I told you about the mechanical properties, or the mechanism. Psyllium husk actually absorbs water. So I can put it in any sauce, smoothie, shake, or even a food mixture, salad. And what it will do, it will just soak up all of the moisture, all of the extra moisture in there. So it's used strategically, but it's also used to add nutritional content to the food in the form of fiber. All right. So I wanted to just share that. All right. So back to the wild rice. We're gonna utilize wild rice today, and so wild rice it has some carbs, but it's not as carb heavy as white rice or even brown rice. It is nutty, and it's a type of grain that is easier on the body. It's not as starch heavy as well too, so it's easy to digest. But you might say, well, wild rice is so dry, right? Wild rice is so hard. How do you create a raw dish from wild rice? So I'll take you through the quick steps, and some of the quick steps include soaking. All right. So if you look at the bowl right here, you'll notice that they all look like they're burst open. And you probably have seen this before because maybe you've cooked wild rice. And if you have cooked wild rice, you'll probably hear people say, oh, it's done when it opens up like a flower, or when it bursts open. So cooking the same mechanics of cooking, or the methods of cooking that we use for regular rice, we can use with wild rice. But there's a way to do it if you're raw and you want to consume wild rice raw. The first step will be to portion out whatever amount of wild rice you want. I'll say start with a small amount, half pound. Um, and you might say, well, wild rice is expensive, but it's hearty and it's filling, super filling. So you could start off with a half or a quarter pound, depending on who you're working with, and you want to soak it first in spring water, right? Just soak it in spring water. Allow for all of whatever it is that's on the surface to kind of loosen up. Allow it to get soft for probably about 20-25 minutes. Then you want to change the water. Try to change the water as many times as you can. All right. When you change the water the second time, you want to make sure you have warmed water on the stove, or you can boil it and then leave it so that it becomes warm, or, almost hot, not lukewarm. You want it warm enough so that once you pour it into the wild rice, because remember, you're draining off the first set of water and you're going to soak it again, making sure that you use warm water. You're going to add two things to that warm water, right? This is the cooking piece. Well, this is the cooking without heat, right? You're going to add ginger powder, and then you can also add cayenne pepper. The ginger and the cayenne in combination produces a chemical heat that helps to that do almost reduce the hardness. It helps to the wild rice to expand. It helps the wild rice to soften. It helps that exterior shell that feels like it's really hard or seems like it's really hard when you first touch it. It actually helps to soften it up and cook it, so to speak. But it's not cooking. It's the cayenne along with the ginger, and also you could use lemon juice too, because lemon juice has a great chemical potential of, beginning the process of Lord and clear. Thank you, Sister Kashia, of beginning the process of softening foods, right? Especially grains. So, how about this? How about this? Has anyone in the chat ever used wild rice before? Right, in its raw state. I know a lot of us are probably accustomed with the cooked wild rice, but how many of you have used wild rice before in its raw state, or have consumed wild rice in its raw state? Anybody? Let me see. There are a few of you in here speaking. Brother Antonio says sounds similar to the process of cooking dry beans. It is very similar to the process of cooking dry beans, Brother Antonio, because because it's always considered that type of because of its tendency to function like a nut, and it's a nut. In some senses, you want to soak it and allow for it to sprout, right, or begin that process of sprouting, so to speak. The good thing about it is too, the soaking for grains and things like wild rice actually helps to initiate that process. All right, and it denatures some of those enzymes that keep, or chemicals that keep it from not sprouting. But people have sprouted wild rice before. I have tried it. I have not been successful, so forget. Somebody else will do that. I'll just try it. But it works very similarly to working with beans. Yes. Sister Kashia says, nope, never open to learn and incorporating. Sister Naya says, never had wild rice raw, only cooked. Yes. So by the time you're finished with this method, you will realize that it's just as soft as cooking it. But I'll tell you this difference. The big difference is when you soak and use wild rice in its raw form, it doesn't have that starchy, clammy, squishy taste. It doesn't have that soft, mushy taste. It remains firm, but it's soft and it's digestible by the body. All right, so it's a lot in the working with it in terms of soaking, and it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot. Every time you pass by the kitchen and you realize, oh wow, it's been sitting there in that water for an hour, 2 hours, you pour it out, right? And you add some more, a little bit more ginger, cayenne, and some warm water. If you are working with wild rice and you want to feed it to children, I will say pull back on the cayenne and the wild rice, because what happens is it gets into the core of the rice. It's part of the seasoning process too. All right. So the good thing is all of that ginger and cayenne aids in seasoning as well. So it has flavor to the core. It doesn't just taste like a spoonful of sap, right? Um, but Antonia says, I didn't know eating raw wild rice was a thing before this. Yes, yes, yes. We're going to learn. We're going to learn about raw ackee and everything else too. Even though there are some people I know who don't want it raw, but that's all right. That's okay. I've survived, and I actually love the raw versions of a lot of the foods. All right. And but Antonio, you're probably familiar with pilau, right? So when I created this particular dish, I wanted to mimic the pilaf that everybody, some people are aware of how to create a pilaf and what should be in it. But I always think of other cultural versions of rice with beans. The only thing is we're not adding beans to this because the rice is a lot, right? It's a lot. So we're gonna just add greens to it. We're doing the raw style right here, right now. You know, I like it raw. We like it raw. The food, right? So we want to, the idea was to look at the pilaf and think about pilau. All I could think about was pilau, right? And there's another African dish that's cooked on rice. It's a one pot, right? It's a one pot. Oh my goodness, what is it called? It's a Nigerian dish. It's gonna come to me. I have kind of, I have had some of it before, but the pilaf came from that. It came from the idea of recreating that rice and beans, whether it's jollof rice, right? Rice with beans and, yes, Sister Maxine, jollof. So pilau is the Caribbean version of it, and so we use a lot of heavy flavors and browning in it, and you have to brown the sugar at the bottom of the pot. It has to turn black, and then you throw in your seasonings, and it just cooks down, and it gets to become like this thick molassy. It looks like molasses, and then you add in your rice, and then you add in the water, and you let it cook down, and then they add a bunch of other things that just makes it, you know, food that we shouldn't be consuming, but apparently that's the cultural thing. So again, this is built off of the idea of recreating a raw version of rice with other veggies. um Let me see. Greetings, Maxine. We can use grated ginger, or does it have to be the powder? You you can use grated ginger. You can also use blended ginger, right? I'll take ginger slices, or a chunk of ginger that probably looks like this. Soak it, scrub off the top, throw the make sure all of the crevices and so on are all scrubbed out, and I will throw it in the blender, blend it with some water, and actually strain it and use that water. If you're creating it for adult palates, and it's it isn't, like they're okay with heat, you can blend it to this consistency. This is garlic here with some ginger, but this is all blended to that consistency, and you can pour it in and let it soak during the last soaking period, right? Because you don't want to throw away all of your ginger. But that's an option. You can blend up fresh ginger and use that instead. I use ginger powder because it's so very potent, right? You need a lot of fresh ginger to do what that potent ginger powder does, which is soften it and work the enzymes, work on the starch and the components of the wild rice, and breaks it down. Um, can black rice be prepared in this way as well? So black rice is great, It cannot be used in this way. If you try it, you will be soaking for a long time because they are of two different types, right? When we talk about wild rice, what we call it wild rice, but it's really a nut, right? So it's a slightly different. It's the cooking method or the food prep method will be different. So you cannot soak black rice in that way. I've seen people use it, but I am telling the difference when you eat it is a huge difference when you eat it. So you want to cook your black rice. You want to cook your black rice. You do not, if you're going to use it. And black rice is very starchy. Much, I know sometimes wild rice can be a bit on the expensive side, but it's not something that you're going to use all the time. It's one of those dishes that you make when you want a treat and you want to, add to a couple other dishes that you may have for a full meal. Okay, but I would not use the same process for black rice. And if you have done it and it worked for you, please share. But I have used it. I've tried all of the darker color rices and so on. They just stick together. They're not prepared. They don't have the same consistency and texture and so on. And they're not as dynamic as not this wild rice. Ima Sequoia says black rice takes forever to cook, so that makes sense. You can soak it before, but it because it's so starchy, right? If you soak some of that stuff before, you have to keep washing it. Let me tell you all a story. I haven't even started the food prep yet, but let me tell you all a story. Right? When I was younger, we literally washed rice, literally, and I still do to this day. I wash the wild rice as well too. Literally take it into my hands and do this because there's um there's that soaking it in water allows for a lot of the starch to be released, and that washing it between your hands and rolling it constantly, it helps to release a lot of that extra starchiness from it. All right, and so we would let rice sit for a little bit in a little water and then wash it. I grew up seeing my grandmother do the same. She would have like a big, because this is the time when we'll have lots of family come over, or we'll go up to my grandmother's house, and she'll be cooking a pot the size of the stove. Like it will sit on top of the whole stove and take up all four burners, right? Or they wouldn't put it on the stove, they'll just create a whole fireside either in the backyard or somewhere, and place they'll place the rocks around and the firewood, and actually build a fire and place that pot on top of those rocks and cook the pot. That's how big the pot is. So when she was washing rice, you'll see her with a big metal tub for food, and it's the same one she would use to knead flour to put in soups and other things, but it was a big metal pan, so to speak, and she would wash. She would be over there washing. I used to say, well, what is all this washing about? I was a kid. I didn't know. But that's part of the cultural thing. But she was also modeling all of the methods of working with different types of food. All right, and that's how I learned that this is what you do in order to clean the rice, right? Because a lot of our all of our rice is imported as well too. So some of that is from the mentality of, we don't know how long thing been sitting in this. I was about to say another word. We call it cocos back. Okay, we don't know how long this thing has been sitting in the nylon bag for as it's being transported or exported. So the idea was always to wash and clean, wash and clean. Sister Kashia says, I did not learn about washing rice until I was well into my adult years. Greetings, greetings, Sister Manira. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Sovereign Experience. So enough talking, because I have been talking and talking and talking and going on and going on and going on. If you have any other questions, please don't be afraid to drop them in the chat and ask. I do have a few things that I have to chop up, so I didn't, I prepared, but I do have a few different things. So there are a couple things I'm going to add to my wild rice, right? I am going to add kale to my wild rice. So what I did was I chopped up, um, I would typically chop up, I like lacinato kale. So just because it has a stronger, more bitter taste and bite, and it just tastes greener. And I have the tendency to go toward things that taste green because to me, that's what good food tastes like, you know. I'm not saying I don't enjoy all of the other things, but when I taste green, it gives me life, right? And you can taste the life in it too. So I'm adding um, lacinato. You can soak them, and then I roll the leaves. I pull the stems off, and I roll the leaves, and you can slice them into long strips. But this time I chose to use just pre-chopped lacinato, soak them. I place them in my blender, and I put a lot of water in there and just allowed it to blend, chop it, right? Not to blend it down into mush, but to chop it. The water I didn't throw away. Well, there's a whole thing that happened with that, but we won't go into it. We would not go into what actually happened to the kale water. But the kale water, I actually would pour it out and keep the bottle, and I can add pineapple to it later and just use it as a base for a drink or a shake. All right, I can add ginger juice to that, and right there I have a cooling drink. So it isn't wasted. All right, I hope these tips are helpful and valuable to everyone. And I like to talk about food. I think you all get that by now. I I have thyme. So thyme. I have a little bit of pepper, some ginger, um, a little bit of ginger, garlic, and onion. You can add too if you like. I didn't add any onion because I want this version to be very garlicky. There is another version that I make which is called Ethiopian wild rice. So that one has different flavors, and you can spice up your own flavor too. You can add, if you want it to be Ethiopian, you can add things like Berber seasoning, and there's another one that's a chickpea based, right? So I'll share another wild rice video later on, and I'll probably do that one. I'll probably do that one. I have some of, like this is the typical green seasoning. And just to show you, I'm using fresh thyme, right? Not dried thyme, fresh thyme. And I have some red cabbage to add add into the mixture for the wild rice to have a nice bright bright mixture of colors. But I use it mostly for garnishing. All right, mostly for garnishing. So I think I'm gonna start by just adding in a few things. Do you all have any additional questions? I need to chop up some yellow peppers over here just so that I can have some a little bit of color. You can't see me chopping. Maybe you want to see me chopping. I don't know. I'll try. Can you all see me? You don't need to see me chop peppers. You don't need to see me chop peppers, do you? I don't think so. But sister Maxine, you asked about the psyllium husk, but I think I shared it before you entered. So I will definitely do another video where I include, all of the different values and properties of psyllium husk, because I remember you asked that question, so I'm going to definitely do that. But at the beginning of the video, I do include how it's used in food, really predominantly to absorb any moisture, so you can make your dish drier, or anything that you're making, you can make it. If it has excess water, you can get rid of that excess water. All right, so all I have is peppers. I don't think I went through the long list of all of the items. I always forget that, but that's fine. That's fine. So I'm adding yellow peppers and red peppers. I actually am doing them chunky, but sometimes I like to do them really thin. And if you're preparing for youth, that's something that you might want to consider. You might want to consider making them very small, mincing the pieces and making them much smaller. So I'm going to mix in all of the ingredients. This bowl is a little bit small, but that's all right. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. We'll make it work. I like to put my hands in food, especially when if I'm eating it, because you know that's how you have to massage food. You have to add to it. So a lot of the seasonings you see here are all fresh, right? All of these seasonings are all very fresh. I'm not really adding anything that is um, powdered seasoning, but feel free to do so if you work with powdered seasoning. There's something about raw food and fresh seasonings that you can't go wrong with, right? It's tasty, really tasty. Sister Maxine says, I'll rewatch after Toda. No problem. What sort of knife is that? Oh my goodness. So this is, I'm not sure what this is. I don't think it's I'm not sure what kind of knife. All I know is, Sister Kashia, when I use knives to chop with, I want the biggest thing, right? So, so sorry. I just always want the biggest knife. So I'll find the longest, the widest blade, and yeah, work with that. I do have a paring knife. This one is for chopping, the larger one. But I do have a paring knife which is much smaller, and you know, I use it for making precision cuts. If I'm going to design something like I chopped the tomato, it's pretty simple to just, use angles, use it for creating angles and cutting things in a specific way. I added chopped ginger to this as well. And so now I'm going to add the greens. You don't have to add all of your greens, but I am going to add all of my greens just because I don't want it to be a wild rice heavy meal. I want it to be balanced. So I want to make sure there's just enough wild rice. I'm going to plate it now. I know y'all can't see, but that I do apologize. My camera is so much closer than it normally is. So that's all on me. That's all on me. Was there anyone who wanted to jump in and jump on and show us their? I'm not sure if anyone did it at all to show us their veggie platter. If I didn't get any, I didn't receive any pictures, but that's all right because it can be ongoing. If you make it later on next strong, later on this week, or you decide to do it later on in the year or later on in August, that's fine. That will be awesome. It will be good. So I am just finishing up this. Now, remember, you can add powdered seasonings to this if you like. But again, I'm using predominantly fresh seasonings. The key to this is to make it the day before because it helps to allow for the food to marinate. You want to make sure it marinates well and the seasonings kind of settle into the rice and the greens. Um, you want to make sure it settles into the rice and the greens. And with this pilaf, I'm going to add some cheese as topping, just to make it appealing, even more appealing. I am going to add some of, just give me a second so I could actually play it. So I'm almost finished. I put a hole in the middle. All right, I put a hole in the middle. Um, Remember last strong when I made the last dip, I said that I was working on reducing the amount of oils that I use. So you'll find here today I did not incorporate any type of oil, but you can. Toasted sesame is always It's always my go-to. There's just something about the bitterness. There's something about bitter foods that I really enjoy. Um, but you can add any type of oil to this just to make it softer. If you want to make it softer, I am using red cabbage as a garnish, really, and just going around the outside. And then I will add some cheese to the top. I think I mentioned that before. Okay, so I'm moving slow, y'all. Moving slow today. Moving slow. I'm moving slow. I'm moving slow. Let me see if I can move a little faster. So let's see if we could do a quiz while we wait. All right. Let's see if we could do a quiz. Who remembers what is psyllium husk used for when it's used in food prep? What are the properties of psyllium husk that are used for that makes it an excellent ingredient in food prep? Why? Let me see if you remember why. It's pretty simple. I said it at the beginning, and I'll share it again later on this strong. I love it. I use it in many, many, many things. Many things. Even when you're making things like cheeses and so on, it helps to firm it up. All right? Helps to firm it up. So this is our plated wild rice pilaf, and I'm just gonna add. I'm going to add a little bit of cheese to it off camera. I apologize for the close camera, y'all. It's just too close. It's too close. And I just added a little bit of cashew cheese. Of course, it's all over the place, but I'm sure you can see it. I'm gonna try to move the camera so you can see the dish. You can use any dish. When I first made this, I would always use whatever container, rectangular uh, dish, because I always have lids, but I could only find this circular one. It's deep, so it allows for me to put a lot of a large serving in here. You can scoop out the tomato seeds and you can add cheese on the inside. You can actually make a tomato cup by scooping out the seeds and then just filling it with cheese, right? Kind of like this, I guess, in this way, if you want to. It's up to you. So that's it for tonight. That's it for this evening. I did a lot of talking at the beginning, but I really wanted to share a little bit about psyllium husk because I kept saying to myself, I keep talking about all of these ingredients and using specific ingredients over and over again. And I wanted to share that, I'm not just using them because I have nothing else to think of to add. It's because of its properties, right? So let me jump in. Sister Kashia says, "Oh, I have a small knife I use for everything, probably why it's dulling." Yeah, no, if you really want to get into efficient food prep, having very sharp knives and having large knives for chopping voluminous things. Like I can't use my paring knife for cabbage. And if anyone wants me to prep for them, the first thing I ask for is, where are your knives? Where's your knife set? Because you should have a knife set. Because each knife you'll see has its own use. What are the eyes for, Brother Antonio? Oh my goodness. Um, Sister Maxine says, well, that looks amazing and it tastes really good. Just don't forget, make it the day before, let it sit, let it, do its thing. But you can actually marinate the rice separately. You can season the rice separately, season the greens separately, and then mix them together. All right. Oil always helps the seasoning to work into the different foods fast. So again, you can add oil, but I did not add oil in this particular dish today. Sister Naya says it looks delicious and it tastes yummy too. Delicious. Make it tomorrow. Trust me, you're gonna love it. That's all you're gonna be eating. You get skinny like a one. Sister Kashia says, Toda Rama for your storytelling and food wisdom. I appreciate you all for sharing in our sovereign space and our sovereign experience. Brother Antonio, I don't know what the eyes are for. Oh, okay. I think I know why. Sister Naya says it was so wonderful and great stories. Give thanks. Oh, yes. Yes, sister. Yes, sister. A set. So this would be your chopping knife. I go over it. This is your paring knife for making precision cuts. You also have a medium. Some people, I think, I listen. I started out focusing on knife sets because my father is the person who's the knife set person, and that's because he's always the one sharpening the knives, and he will always be the one taking out it's a big production, sharpening all the knives, making sure they make clean cuts, right? And he was not the person who food prepped, but he understood that he just had to keep track of the sharpened knives, and so there was a knife block, and there would always be knives used for specific things, um, specific jobs. I appreciate you all. Enjoy your Yom Rishon or your Sunday. Tune in again, please, um, for our midday motivation. Some of them will be live. Some of them I will just premiere the video so that way you can, touch base with the information whenever you need to, whenever you are ready. Um, I'm not gonna taste this because I'm going to go over and make a plate for myself and enjoy it. But I've done this recipe 1,000 times. Well, no, not true, not 1,000 times, but many, many times, and it's always really good, filling, satisfying. I appreciate you, Brother Antonio, Sister Kashia, Sister Naya. Who else was in the chat? Sister Manira. Um, Ima Precious, Ima Sequoia, and Chief Yuya, wanting God. Chief Yuya, give thanks and praise for this opportunity and space to share with you all. And I'll see you again. Wellness is yours. Hold on to it. Hold on tight. Hold on tight. Hold on tight.